Nice to see you, Erin.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too.
Okay. All right, we're live, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Illinois Green Party series. I'm your host, David Rych. So this Wednesday is National Women's Day, which is great, and I'm excited about this month because we have tonight we're going to talk about each person here has in one way or another been involved in politics, and obviously are female. And we were going to talk about how the women in politics, whether it be holding an official office, campaigning, or just sort of being involved in it directly in your life. So most of this conversation is going to be just you all chatting about this, telling us about this, and I'm just going to kind of kick back. So we were hopefully having Toneal Jackson come on, who ran for a MRSB. Is that what it's called?
WRD.
Yeah, so I wasn't even close. This last time around, and unfortunately didn't win, but ran a campaign, which is interesting enough in and of itself. So, Erin, since you're the guest, because Ian and I kind of host this show simultaneously, or work on the show simultaneously. Again, thank you for taking time. I know you're a very busy person. She's the Lake County Circuit Court clerk. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
It took me like 2 years to get that right, along with Anna's last name. And Erin's a friend of mine, and she's been on my radio shows before. She's been on a couple other shows before. Her husband, David Weinstein, has been on this show probably about a year and a half ago, talking about ETOs. So, yeah, you won your second campaign candidacy for the same office.
Yes.
And so, why don't you, first of all, let's get, hi, Toneal. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Toneal, Erin, Toneal.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hey.
Yeah, so Erin, why don't you go ahead and tell us about what made you get involved in politics in the first place? I know you were a lawyer, and but not all lawyers get involved in politics. So what kind of got you interested in that?
It was actually the job itself that got me interested. I was practicing law in Lake County for 17 years prior to running for this office, and I knew Lake County well, and this opportunity came up, and one of the senators told me that a judge had come to him and recommended that I run for the Democratic seat for the circuit clerk, and I was looking for a change. I was practicing family law, and I mean, I still do some practicing of family law, but I just needed something different in my life, and this job popped up, and I absolutely love it. And so it was more of the job than the politics. Politics are tough sometimes. But
politics can be very nasty. I mean, even especially nowadays. I mean, I listen to a lot of political talk shows on the radio and stuff like that, and there's just so much division and hatred, and it's just such a gross time. But yeah, so I understand that. So okay, so it's more of the it's a Lake County Circuit Court clerk. So what do you do? What was attractive about it?
So our main job is to be the record keeper for the court system. So our full priority is, helping the public between, working either with their lawyers or trying to draft up their, different lawsuits that they're trying to file, or, defending themselves against lawsuits filed against them, working with them. But we're kind of that in between us and between just everything starting to happen and being in the courtroom. So we have a public access piece, and then we also have a, keeping all the documents, keeping all the records. So we're in the courtroom with the judges. So we have the, courtroom piece.
Yeah. Which can be very formidable, by the way, and daunting.
Yes.
I know enough lawyers and heard enough horror stories. And family law, by the way, is just probably one of the most difficult, just psychologically and emotionally and morally difficult areas of law to deal with. I've known several lawyers in family law, and I do know for a statistical fact that it has the highest burnout rate. Because we talk, children being separated from their families, rightly or wrongly, that's always tough. Abuse of children, sometimes homicide. I mean, just drug use and just all sorts of tearing families apart is really gets to the inner core of a human identity, I think. And so it's really tough to deal with. So good for you for doing that, because it's much needed. There's no doubt. So, okay, very cool. Toneal, how are you?
I am David. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Great to see you.
You too.
Your hair looks fabulous.
Look, it's always a guess of what it's going to look like when I come.
You're always keeping us guessing. I love it. No, it's fantastic. I don't have much. I don't have a lot of options with mine. What's that?
And I said Happy New Year. I think this is the first time I've seen you this year.
It's been a while, yes. Happy New Year to you as well. And I
You.
see your posts online a lot. You're just a busy person, and you're getting a lot accomplished, inspiring a lot of people. And recently, you ran for a specific office as a Green Party member. And why don't you tell us what that was about, and just how the campaign went?
Sure. So, yes, I was running for commissioner of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, aka MWRD, because that is a whole mouthful, right? And
Yeah.
so, this was kind of like a baptism by fire. I was running.
Oh,
I had been endorsed by the Green Party to run. I had also been endorsed by IVI-IPO, which is the Independent Voters of Illinois Independent Precinct Organization. So these acronyms really help because it's a mouthful. But yeah, so this was really something that was new for me. Like Erin, I am not one that really is into politics. And so for me, the main reason why I'm running was really just to represent our party because I'm also the chairwoman of the Cook County Green Party. So to be able to have some green faces in high places, right? So to make sure that we
I
were
like that.
it where people understood that it's not just a duopoly with red and blue. And so that was really my main reason what that started me to run. But the more that I started to learn about the position, I kind of was like, you know what, I actually can do this more than just as a rep, like you don't want to just be seen as a token, so to speak, so I didn't want to just be running just because the Green Party wanted me to. And I really enjoyed what we were doing. And so, in terms of the campaigning process, it was definitely grueling. There were a lot of things I learned after the fact because, again, coming in not knowing what it is to run, I'd never run for office before. And so, like when you had to go through getting the petition signed to make sure you had enough signatures to qualify, like I thought that was a lot. That was probably that was probably like the easiest part of the process, and it's
Really?
hard.
As a third party candidate?
Yeah,
Because I
that was
ran as a libertarian before I joined the Green Party, and it was a nightmare trying to get
no, but I
signatures.
think that's my point though. My point is that that's not easy, and it was the
Okay.
easy part of the process
Oh,
because
okay.
you're then having to do outreach, and because we are an independent party, it's not like we have thousands or tens of thousands of people. And so like the membership that we did have people pitching in, trying to help with the way that they could. But I learned about the campaigning process. I think it was really after the election happened that I learned more lessons, right? So like I
Oh, okay.
got I want to say it was like 250,000 votes, and to be my first time running independent budget, and I have to insert that the Green Party does not take corporate donations. So I think that that's really huge to understand because when you're trying to be endorsed by many of these organizations, one of the first things that they ask is how much money have you raised for your campaign? And so, although they don't say out loud that that's a qualifier.
I
So
didn't
it's
know that.
say, if you say that you've only raised 500 or $1,000, they're looking at, the Republican and Democratic counterparts who've maybe raised 50,000 or 100,000. And it's because they get to, because they accept corporate donations. And so, many of the different interviews that I did for endorsements, that was definitely a make or break situation. But that is something that we stand proud on. It's not something that I felt the need to defend. In fact, like when I went into the interview, I kind of led with that as being something that was a strength of ours. The fact that we are not puppets of everybody else's, and the fact that we do have to work a little bit harder because we're not going to get one person that's going to write us a $50,000 check. Like if we get $5,000, it's because we've probably talked to at least 500 to 1,000 people, So there's a lot more work that goes into it. But I mean, like we did weekly strategy sessions. And like I say, at the end, what I realized was that we could have definitely had a greater presence amongst the wards because it's broken down with Cook County. You're looking at the 50 wards that make up Chicago as well as the suburban areas. And so, I didn't necessarily know that going in. And so that's my fault. I should have been more educated about that process. But I think that it was definitely a lesson to be learned. So running for office is definitely not an easy thing, but depending on what you're trying to do, is definitely worth it.
Well, good. That's why I'm glad you learned less. I mean, if you succeed or fail at anything, if you learn something, it's always good, right?
Yep,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
kind of a cheesy thing to say, but it's true.
It's so
Anna, how about you? You ran for offices or a function within campaigns. How did you get involved in that?
Yeah, I actually, when I was 12, I had my what people call the aha moment. It was that moment that is described as that moment where you realize things might not be right in the world, and that you can go ahead and use what you have in your resources to go ahead and change it. And when I got to college at Northern Illinois University is really when I took off with being more active in politics. There is one person at one table, and they asked me if I was interested, and I said yes. And it so happens to be that person I found out later is friends of friends, so I still am in communications with that person. So the power of one is amazing, because if one person was not there, I might not have been involved at that time, and that was in early 2000. And so I really came in through like the anti-corporate, the anti-nuclear, anti-war groups. And so that kind of was the beginning of my activism. And I went on protests in several states. I camped out at the Yucca Mountain with the they were having an anti-nuclear protest there. So I camped out there for 3 days. So I was an activist before I even got involved in politics and ballot access politics. It was about 2006. I had actually called the Green Party, and I had called the Democrats, and I just, at that time, the Democrats just were able to engage me more. And so I was with them for about almost over a decade, and I ran twice with them. I started in 2000, and I threw my hat in the ring 2012. I was 7 months pregnant. So probably a little bit more than 7 months pregnant. I think I was 8 months pregnant at the time, and I ran for the Lowell Township trustee, and I lost that position. But then I ran again in 2016 for the County DuPage County Board District 3 position. I lost that one as well. But in 2017, I was actually asked to interview for the state rep position in my district. And at that meeting, I knew that I needed something more. I knew I needed something more to the power of the people, and I needed less war party, less corporate contributions. And so it took me about 2 years to find the Green Party and get engaged with them. But every moment since then has been well worth that wait. I love being here. I love being able to be in a party that says peace and actually will work towards peace as well. I'm proud to be in a party where we're not going to vote for an $858 billion
military fund. Yeah.
on both sides. Sometimes people talk about polarization, and sometimes we have to look at the facts, at how many people of the two major established parties voted for this defense budget, and we'll find that our polarization is not as polarized as
Right.
as we think. So
Right.
I'm just really happy to be here. I did run one time as a green, and that was because we got the COVID relief in 2020. And so I reached over what they call ballot line. So I would have been established in the next race after that if it wasn't a redistricting period. So, and I did attempt to collect a minimum of 1,500 petitions for the state representative race in 2022. Unfortunately, my house had COVID and I had to stay inside, and I would just missed that minimum by just a little bit. But you know, the state house and the U.S. House terms, they're every two years. So we have 700 days to put our game plan together and keep it going. So that's something that I think people don't know. It's just like, all right, just put your shoes back on and get going, because those days are still counting down. So
yeah, that's true. There's a lot of urgency, especially when it comes to like climate change. I mean, like literally the IPCC is talking like in 7 years is like our first deadline to reduce carbon emissions globally by 45%. 7 years, guys. Okay. Anyway, that's creepy. Real quick. So like, go back to the beginning of the story. Like you said, that one person at the table, if that person had not been there, we wouldn't be here talking.
I mean, eventually I probably would have gotten involved, but I wouldn't have gotten involved at that time.
I think that's really, I always love those sort of experiences. Like literally, you know, I was a libertarian in the Libertarian Party before I joined the Green Party. So if it wasn't for that progression, I wouldn't be here talking to you. And literally I was at the Lake County Fairground, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I was going down like one of the main aisles, realizing that I had not yet turned onto the left part of that aisle. So I did. And right around the corner was the Libertarian booth. And here we are. It's because of that very thing. If I decided just to turn around and go home, we wouldn't have this conversation right now. It's crazy. I love that stuff. Anyway, Erin, thank you for being patient. When you first started out as a candidate for the first time you ran, did you find? I mean, Democratic Party is higher profile than the Green Party for sure. So I'm guessing it's somewhat easier to obtain signatures and funding and that kind of thing. But is there what kind of challenges did you find as like a first time candidate?
Well, my toughest, and continues to be my toughest, is I hate asking for money.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, you're right.
An awful thing. I do okay when, you know, like I'm doing it for Women United or the Coalition to Reduce Recidivism, you know, I can say, hey, will you please? But when it comes to me, there's...
You're personally right.
I don't know why, but I just hate doing it. So that from day one was the most difficult piece for me. But, you know, I mean, it's a lot of boots on the ground. I mean, it's a lot of, you know, being at every event and socializing with everybody and having them get to know you. And, you know, that's, I mean, the toughest is just keeping your schedule and making sure you get to everything you can get to and meeting everybody and knowing, you know, no one knows what a circuit court clerk does. I mean,
right.
You know, for me, it's like, you know, half the people in my party who asked me to run for the seat didn't know what we did. But,
okay.
You know, I think that's the, you know, but it's just, I think it's just keeping yourself organized and being everywhere. I remember being like getting home at night and like my muscles of my mouth hurt from smiling for so long.
From saying, hi, how are you? I'm Erin.
Yeah,
like
you know,
a billion times.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so, but I mean, overall, I personally feel that getting involved in politics made me so much more aware of my community around me. You know, the good, the bad, the difficult, you know, I mean, I've met so many wonderful people and people working so hard to help our community, and, you know, and then you see things that really you hope change down the line and you'd love to be an advocate for it. So, I mean, I think that's the best part of it for me, for sure. And then, you know, the most difficult is money. I hate asking for money.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I need people to just be like, I love you here.
Right. Just, you know, yeah, just understand that so I don't have to actually say the words. I get it. So, okay, that's very cool. Toneal, what about sort of obstacles, complications, or difficulties did you find in running? Concern, like, obviously the third party candidate is going to have a different vantage point than a Democratic candidate. But like, what kind of things did you come across?
Well, I think for us, it was getting people to know who we were, right?
Okay.
It's amazing.
Like the Green Party itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was actually multiple things. So kind of like Erin saying nobody knows what the clerk does, MWRD, nobody knew what that was. Like everybody, so when we were going out for even in the petitioning stage, and we're like, MWRD, so many times we had to say the whole thing out. And then even in explaining what that, saying Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, they are water and thinking it's the water company. So they're telling us about,
Right.
going on with the water and why is this and that. And, so just the misunderstanding of what MWRD is and does, not even knowing who the Green Party was. And again, so as an independent party, we definitely have our work cut out for us to be more present and more visible, right? Because like what Erin was saying, for us, it was even because we're not known. A lot of times when you're part of a major party, then you're automatically going to be connected to certain things. You're automatically getting invites to certain parties. There were things that we were not even exposed to because we didn't have those connections, right? So like we would see things either after the fact or at the point where they're like, hey, meet the candidates. And we're like, but all the candidates aren't there because we're actually candidates too, And so there are certain things that you get excluded from, and I don't necessarily think it's a finger pointing situation. Like it's not necessarily, oh, they're excluding the Greens, it's they didn't know that there were Greens, like even when we did interviews, so many of the interviewers would say, oh, I didn't even know the Green Party had somebody running, and so that's why I say that for us as a party, we definitely have to do our job a little bit better so that way people know more about the Green Party. And so for me, and it was really hard because the same year that I'm running for office is the same year that I get voted in for chairwoman. And so it was really kind of hard to wear both hats simultaneously. And that's how come like now I'm not running for this term for anything because I really just want to do right by this position because I've been voted in again as the chair. And my focus is really just on growing the Green Party, not just in number, but also just in exposure where people will know who the Green Party is, because I think it definitely has to be a lot more strategy that's inserted. Because the other thing is because of the because we don't really run for a lot of offices, because again, you have to be established in a lot of different offices in order to run, and if you're not, then it's just a massive amount of signatures that you have to obtain. So a lot of things we're not connected to, or we haven't been connected to. So for me, it's really like a one day at a time, one step at a time situation, where I want to, this year we're focusing on 3 actual issues, and then connecting with alliances, organizations that also share those same concerns, or the focus is the same, so that way when we run again, that it's not going to be as difficult. So for us, like I say, it wasn't necessarily as much about the fundraising, because we actually had someone who that was their job to campaign and try to raise funds for us. But the main thing is just building more exposure so people do understand that you don't just have the Republicans and Democrats that you can vote for.
Right. That's interesting because, like, talking about like how nobody seems to know. I mean, Ralph Nader was a very high-profile guy who kind of kicked off the notoriety of the Green Party, however many years ago, a couple decades ago. He was already well known in the public because he's a consumer advocate. I think he started that whole thing. And then Jill Stein, a couple elections ago. I don't think she's known for anything outside of being in the Green Party, but she was definitely she was on CNN. She was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So the profile of the Green Party has gone up over the last few decades. But I will say this: when I ran for regional office of education around here as a Green Party member, I went to the clerk's office, not the same thing that Erin does. That this was Robin's thing, O'Connor's, who switched from Democrat to Republican, by the way. I went there, and this is a political hub. This office is a political hub. So anyway, I fill out the paperwork to authenticate my candidacy, and it says party affiliation. I put down green, and the guy who works in the office, he's like, "There's no such thing as a Green Party." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Okay." So anyway, just to put it in perspective, a guy who should probably know that definitely didn't. Anyway, so Anna, how about you? I mean, any so I'm going to get around to like the more pivotal question of like, with it being women's National Women's Day on Wednesday, and any difficulties like campaigning or being in office as a woman specifically. But I want to know more about like in general, like any obstacles you came across or things you learned from that were challenges.
Yeah. I just wanted I'll just start this off though. It was, since I ran as a Democrat and I ran as a Green, it was way easier to run as a Democrat. Things were just, you had the endorsements, the timeline of the endorsements matched the timeline of the rest of the election process. And so like as a Green, the petition process is also at the same time as the endorsement process, and the endorsement process people, they don't want to do anything yet until you're on the ballot, but you're not going to be on the ballot until after the endorsement. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit of, tricky. And then time wise, you want to focus on all your time and getting on the ballot and not worrying and worrying about the endorsements later, but it's like the endorsement process is at the same time as the petition process. So I think running as a Green, it was more difficult with the schedule than when I ran as a Democrat, because I felt with the Democrat, things were just handed to me on a silver platter. I'm like, here's stuff, here's the funding, the endorsements, here it is. And with the Green Party, it's more like a startup, you have to do a little bit more legwork, you have more phone calls to make, and make sure that people know that you're going to be on the ballot, so they can do the endorsement process for after you may get on the ballot. So it's a lot more difficult. And in Illinois, we're one of the harder states to achieve ballot access. I know at one point we were like the third hardest. I don't know what we are now, but we were like next to Alabama hard. So that was, I never knew that.
Alabama or anything.
Yeah, I never knew that until I stepped outside of the established party system about how hard it really is.
Yeah, no, it's really hard.
Yeah. But as a woman, like the very first time I ran for office, one of my first questions I received was, "How are you going to make dinner?"
Wow.
And run for politics.
Holy cats. Yeah, okay, like stuff like that, if not worse. But I mean, that's how are you going to make dinner? Well, I'm going to have my cell phone right here, my baby on my hip with my shoes off, stirring the pot. Is that okay? Holy shit.
Yeah, well, I was very pregnant when I ran it, and I remember we were doing the postcards and we were making sure it was propped over my belly because my belly was way out there. And so, and even in this, and even the last time I tried to run in 2022, I mean, I still my team received some questions and I received some questions, alongside of does your husband support this? Are you going to have time for your children? Like, people were very concerned over how women are going to run for politics and still be the homemaker.
Right.
So it's still out there.
That's the expectation of the social expectation is that the woman's the homemaker. That's what's still out there. Right. Well, what are you going to do as a politician, taking care of your kids and cooking meals for your husband when your husband's working so hard 40 hours a week at his cubicle? Yeah. So, okay. So, Erin, how about you? Any similar anecdotes that?
I really don't.
Okay.
I don't know if I, just laugh them off when they happen and
So they don't
walk
stay.
away, or
Right.
I mean, my biggest antidote like that was from when I was practicing law.
Okay.
You know, I had one, I had a family law case that was actually my husband's, and he's not always his favorite thing to do. And so he prefers his criminal defense practice. And so it got a little complicated, and he's like, will you kind of take this over? And I'm like, sure. But the client wanted him there. So he would come to court, and then I would just, you know, do my thing. And the attorney on the other side, who knew me very well, I'd been practicing against him for years, took Dave out in the hallway and said, can you get control of your wife?
Oh.
And Dave looked at her and said, well, if you can't control her, what makes you think I can?
Right.
That's a really good line. But I mean, I think, to be a little bit blunt about it, I do think that there's some stigma that the circuit clerk is a woman.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean,
traditionally,
I have heard, you know, I've heard that, and my predecessor was not. I have worked, you know, half of the clerks I work with, well, probably not half, but I don't know, at least 40% statewide are men. And
so it's a false image. It's not.
Yeah, but I will say, in my office, you know, I mean, 90% of my staff is women. And so I think that there's some stigma to that. So there's some expectation. And I remember a few people saying to me, well, you're a woman, you've already got, you know, a heads up on a clerk situation. So, or in a clerk position. So that, I don't know if there's some expectation, and maybe that's not why I've heard it as much. I've had a few like instances where, you know, people have made me feel like a woman where I'd never felt that way before, but I can't remember exactly what they were.
Like subordinate, or in a positive way?
Like just condescending.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, lady.
Yeah, I mean, and that was actually from other like county government employees who did that. So it wasn't necessarily, you know, it wasn't like it came from the outside,
right,
where I felt that. But, you know, I've been, I feel like I've been pretty lucky, or maybe I'm just too stubborn and cranky to notice when people do it. And I'm like, whatever, you dummy, let's move on. You know, I mean,
no, but I mean, though, like, you know, even the example from being a lawyer is legitimate as well. I mean, just along the line of like any sort of professional dealings as a woman nowadays, you know, how far have we come? Like, I can't imagine we're in the same place we were in the 50s. But I mean, even though there is some of the same sort of things, my guess is, without having any actual data, is that the quantity of it is less nowadays than it was. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I can say I have a perspective that when I go into a meeting or I am talking about something, that I know it, you know, that I won't walk in and try and just fly off the cusp. And there are a lot of times I see men do that in my profession, that I don't know if I wouldn't get away, if it's my own personal, you know, desire to always be prepared, or if it's an expectation that as a woman I can't go in unprepared. But so I'm not really sure what it is, but I will say, you know, when I see people fly off the cusp, I'm like, oh, you know, but you know, I don't know if a woman would get away with it as well as a man could get away with it. I mean, but I guess that would be my only real thought, you know. But I was like that as a lawyer. I was always over prepared versus under prepared, because you never, you know, it just was how I was. But
well, that sounds pretty good to me. Like, I mean, why would you want to walk into something as serious as like a trial unprepared or underprepared? Like that, that's kind of weird to me. But okay, but men do that a lot.
I'm not saying they do it a lot. I'm just saying that, I mean, I see it more that way, I guess. But
it sounds like the stubbornness like men have of, like, you know, directions and maps and stuff like that. No, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that whole thing, you know, where the woman wants to, like, well, pull over and let's ask somebody for directions. No, I got it, honey. It's okay.
Yeah.
And then they get lost in the mountains and like, get eaten by cannibals or something. So, okay. Toneal, how about you? Any sort of like misogynistic, patriarchal, sexist obstacles or anything you've encountered?
Well, mine is probably a different one. Not, I mean, like obviously you do get there is a lot of, as Erin said, a lot of condescending comments in general, just being a woman. But for me, I'm used to it. I might have should have answered this question last month, because many of mine is really as being a Black woman more so
Right.
than being a woman, right?
Right.
And then being a Black woman running for the Green Party, because that was really where I caught a lot of it. Like, wait a minute, you're a part of what party? Because the default mentality is that the Green Party consists of mostly white people, and so like when people would see someone Black running, first of all, being a part of the Green Party, that raised.
Oops, we lost her.
Oh,
I'm sorry, that was my daughter, but it.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. She keeps
That's
calling. So hopefully everything's okay. But see, that's the whole thing being calm, right? So we're saying it doesn't happen, but it actually does happen. Okay, but here's the point that I was making is that a lot of what I got a lot was people, number one, because they didn't really know about the Green Party. What they did know was pretty much race based, and it was wrong, but it was race based, where they felt like the Green Party is just really a party comprised of all white people. And so you don't really see Black people, especially not Black people in leadership in the Green Party. And so, that was something that I really had to kind of get you to understand the right narrative. You know what I'm saying? But definitely in my everyday life, it's always like that. Like what Erin said, I can definitely understand and relate to it, because in many of the rooms that I'm in, I'm typically the only woman in the room. Because a lot of times, even in 2023, you don't have, women's rights they are more equal now, but it's still definitively a man's world. And so when you are in leadership, when you are a woman, like I'm the boss of my company. And so when you're in different networking events, like the assumption is that you're the secretary, you're there to take notes, or you're there to, and so it is a hard stick to overcome, but I'm always up for a good challenge. So absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, you are. I can tell that about you very much. So you are intense. You are awesome. Okay. Do you see? So Anna, let's go back to you. Let's just keep the circle going here. What about sexual harassment? Do you find any of that in campaigning or politics, or like, because you have your law degree too? I know you're not practicing per se, but I mean, anything like that? Anything like awkward flirtations, anything like that? Because I know that whole thing nowadays is super controversial, because I think people like to flirt, and I think we're just trying to figure out as a society what is acceptable and what isn't. Going up and propositioning a woman, for full-blown activities is not okay, that kind of thing. But I don't know what is. But I mean, anything like that going on in your experience?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I do have a JD.
Right.
So I don't really think so much of that. I don't really see too much of that on the campaign trail. Sometimes, if I'm talking to a male and they're like, oh yeah, I'll sign it. I don't, there's really nothing, nothing there. Yeah. So, but, I do, there are women, I think, are more excited to see me than men. And I've had more women volunteers come forward than men volunteers, even though I do get some men volunteers. I think the women, I think they can, I think what attracts them to me is that I'm talking something different. I'm doing something different. I'm outside of those lines. And I remember there was this one gentleman that I actually ran into twice, and I'm like, oh, hey, would you like to sign my petition? He's like, oh, I got your flyer and I looked you up and it's not my cup of tea. And I'm like, oh, okay, great, thanks. And so, because I know a lot of people are looking for something new, I might not be that cup of tea, but I know that, it still signals to me that he's still not happy with what's on the plate. He's still not happy to choose from A or B, so I know that there's still, some things out there, but, I will talk to all people of all different parties. I will talk to Republican males. I remember this one time, it was right after Roe versus Wade was overturned, and I don't know the context of his shirt, but I started talking before I looked at his shirt, and his shirt was not in favor of women, we'll say. And
are there words you can't say on the show, or like, okay?
It was just, it was like, did not want anything to do with women. We'll just say.
Okay.
And I already started talking and giving them my spiel, and I had a conservative message. I had property taxes, reduced property taxes, set term limits. And so these are not things that you're going to hear necessarily from the Democrats. So I gave them my spiel, individual liberties. And so him and his friends signed it, and I thanked them and I left, but it was, in my head, as I started talking, then in my head, I'm like, oh boy, after I saw his shirt, but he was fine. And,
right. You're going to have to tell me what this is off air, because now I'm super curious. All right.
I don't want to say anything.
Don't say, that's fine. That's fine. We'll talk about it later. You can text it to me. Because I've seen some pretty hysterical yet / offensive shirts before. So I don't know if they're meant to be serious or not. I mean, I strive to find humor in almost everything I possibly can. So maybe they were actually offensive and I just didn't pick up on it because I thought it was too stupid and funny. But okay, yeah, I get that. Erin, okay, so the Republican Party has gone absolutely crazy since Trump, and maybe a little bit before that. But I mean, as a party, I never thought that they were as crazy as they are now. I never liked them. I've never voted for a Republican, even as a Green Party member. Well, I've been a Green Party member only a couple of years, but I've always voted Democrat up until the last couple of years. And they're just nuts. So, and this whole idea of like the Roe versus being overturned and it all going to the states, you just had in Idaho, they're literally trying to make law that even at the point of the health risk, or even the life endangerment of the life of the pregnant mother, weighs less than the unborn child. Legally weighs less, means less. Now, if this isn't like a complete and total attack on women, I don't know what an attack on women looks like politically. Do you see, I'm assuming in obviously in politics, you're going to deal a lot with both sides. I mean, especially the third parties aside, I mean, just the Democrats and Republicans. Do you see that same sort of like conservative prejudice against women in your day-to-days when dealing with Republicans or maybe some of the more conservative Democrats? Or do you think there's an isolated group of them that just happen to be at the top of some of these states' legislators that are causing all the ruckus?
Well, my personal opinion is it's a completely hypocritical thing to say because they love the Second Amendment and their guns. So
right. No, it's ridiculous. No,
completely hypocritical. But our lives mean less to them than their guns mean to them.
Right.
But I think because my job isn't policy based, I don't hear about it as much.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
You don't hear the arguments amongst legislators about, okay. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't, with me personally, it's not usually a debate because, I follow all of the laws of the Supreme Court, our 19th Judicial Circuit, the legislators. So I don't so much create that policy unless we're working on something. But I don't have a whole lot more on that.
No, that's political. I mean, I think that's a positive sign that it's not, if you will, leaking down into the more privatized offices or isolated offices.
No, other than us being mad about it, and I I don't, we don't really have those debates
Right.
from my end. Yeah.
Or but not even that attitude coming out of somebody like a Republican in your office for a day, like, woman.
No, I mean, I think you do get to know all of the local politicians. So we know the House reps, we know the, we know the state senators. We're around our congressmen all the time. So I think we all know each other pretty well and know where each other stands. And I mean, if one of the Republicans was going to bring it up to me, it wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. And I think we usually try and keep it pleasant.
So
and there are a lot of things that we do agree on as well, Republican versus Democrat. So, but those big party line issues, I don't think they'd bother to bring it up with me because it wouldn't go well.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, it's such a huge deal nowadays, and people can have their individual opinions about it, but the thing that bothers me the most, and this is not a law or policy that affects me personally because I'm a man, but I mean, I still, believe in justice and for everybody, and this idea of like that, you're pro-choice because you believe that a woman has the right to choose because it's her body. That's why. That's the underlying argument. Period. It's hers. This is mine, right here. It does not belong to the government. And I think that that's something that was supposed to be kind of like an underpinning to American constitutional law since its inception. But somehow we've lost sight of that, or maybe we never really had it in the first place, and it's all just been a big scam. I don't know. Toneal, what do you got going on with this kind of stuff? And it doesn't have to be about Roe or anything like that, but just
Oh no, it can be because
okay.
Lots of opinions.
What's that?
I said it can be because I have lots of opinions about this.
Okay.
So when it was looking as though it was going to happen, right? Like I did a live broadcast on this because I was trying to let people know, because again, you have to look at the fact that I'm not just a woman, but I'm also a Black woman. So for being Black, this could have huge repercussions because if you can go back 50 years to overturn a decision, then what prohibits you from going back even further to overturn other decisions? And I'll just get you guys to understand what connect the dots that I'm putting out there. And so I am definitively pro-choice, and I got in trouble in a lot of different Christian circles because obviously, they're just, well, it's wrong to commit murder, and so abortion is wrong. So for them, it's simply A plus B equals C. Now, for me, the thing that I don't like is that they make it where it's pro-choice versus pro-life. Like you can't believe both. Like the stance is, if I believe that a woman should have a choice over her own body, that then means that I am for abortion. And so the fact of the matter is that, and I've gone on record saying this, I am not for abortion. However, I am more for a woman being able to choose what she does with her body, because at the end of the day, only that woman has to carry that child, number one. Number two, you don't know if there are any medical issues, any traumatic issues. You don't know any of that. And if you are not going to be there to help her raise that child, then who are you to say what and how she has to deal with it? To the church community, how I would pose it is this: if we believe in God and we're saying, oh, it's such a sin, so it's not even crime, it's a sin. At the end of the day, you have to believe the whole story, which means that come judgment day, I'm not going to be judged for what she may have chosen to do. So why then is it my job to judge her or to say what she can do with her body? And so, like I say, I feel very strongly about this issue. Many people don't like where I stand. I really don't care, because again, we all get to have an opinion about it. But I just feel that, because here's going to be the other end of it. You get women who either you're making them have children when they're saying they don't want them. And then you're going to be mad if they end up being abusive, if they have the child, but they end up in the garbage can, in the foster system. You can make her have the child, but you can't make her be a good mother. Or the opposite of even that spectrum is now she's had 8 children, 10 children, 12 children, and now you're mad because all of your tax dollars are going to pay in for all of the children that she's having. So I just feel like that this is an issue where if you're not able to have a child, you definitively shouldn't have anything to say. But other than that, I believe that it should be up to that woman to decide for herself. And obviously, if she's married, for the woman and her husband to decide what goes on and what's best for them and their household.
All right, well said. Thank you very much, and thank you for being honest about it and genuine. Because I understand the difficulty of being, involved in a left-leaning political party and being a devout Christian. I get that. I know several friends of mine like that. Most of them are not necessarily left-leaning, but I mean, I've know several devout Christians who will say, like, I think that homosexuality is a sin. I don't think it should be illegal. It's kind of the same thing. Like you were saying, like there's a big difference between a sin and a law, or an illegal act. And I think that's one of the frustrations coming from everyone outside of the right-wing Christian community that's trying to do all this stuff legally is just this idea, like, stop imposing your personal religious positions on me through the law. Stop doing that. If you are opposed to gay marriage, don't marry somebody of the same sex. If you're opposed to abortions, don't have them. But stop imposing this stuff on me, because I am not a Christian. I don't abide by your same Christian values. I don't. Some of them I do, sure. But not all of them, for sure. So thank you for that very much. Anna, what say you on this stuff?
I just wanted to say for the Illinois Green Party, their stance obviously is pro-choice, but it also comes from a place where we don't want unwanted children.
Right.
We want wanted children.
Right.
So that's in our platform too, and I can put it up on the screen. It's www.ilgp.org/platform, and so people can read more about it on that. But for me personally, let's be pro-lunch, let's be pro-education, let's be pro-health. Like we need to make sure the children that we have now are taken care of. We need healthcare. We need community-based economics. We need safe environment for them. We need water. We need air. These are basics that we need, and we need to be spending our time and our energy politically making sure air and water are here for the children to when they do come. So it's a very, to me, it's not just a polarized thing. It's more of a holistic item. Is we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our children. And to me, it's individual liberty above all else.
Right. That's a huge part of it. I'm thank you for saying that too, especially from, coming from a leftist party. A lot of people think that like a leftist automatically means like, hardcore Marxism and the state runs everybody's behavior or something. It's not even close to that. Decentralization is one of the 10 party platforms. If that wasn't there, we also would not be having this conversation, because I wouldn't have joined. Because individual liberty is extremely important to me. Your body is inviolable. And is determined by your will alone. And this covers a great many different areas of life that some are good, some are bad. I mean, this whole note, politicians like to say like, hey, your life is awful. It's full of risks. If you, elect me, I'll fix it all. Well, you can't get rid of all risk in life. It doesn't work that way. So, some safety measures are good, but, when it starts trampling all over somebody's individual rights and what to do with their body, I have a huge problem with that for sure. Like, you don't get to pollute the earth because the earth doesn't belong to you. It belongs to everybody. That is one of the big differences. Anyway, Erin Cartwright Weinstein. Do you have an extra large, driver's license? Because your name is so.
Oh. I know when I first took office, someone sent a letter and it said, Erin Cartwright Weinstein, your name is too long, clerk of the circuit court.
Good thing I didn't hyphenate mine.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, Scheifel. Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay.
So actually, so my legal name is Weinstein, and then my business was under Cartwright, and so I ran under Cartwright Weinstein.
Oh, I see. So like legal. Okay, so I get license. It just says Aaron Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
I mean,
So it's not that bad.
Okay, I thought maybe they just, made the font smaller. Anyway, okay, so we're almost done here. This is a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, ladies, for coming on the show because I really enjoyed this and learning about your specific roles within politics and otherwise. Aaron, so what's next for you? What do you got going here?
Well, I run again in 2024. So
you're gonna go for the same office?
I am. I really love it. So I'm gonna. Yeah, we're just starting to amp up and have to start asking for money.
I know. I get it. That's a drag. I mean, yeah.
But I have to say I'm impressed. I was just thinking of the 3 largest counties on your show: DuPage, Lake, and Cook.
Oh yeah. I didn't even think about that. Look at that. You're right. Absolutely right. Well, there you go. Well, very cool. So you're going to run again. I know that your staff absolutely adores you. When I first met you, I think it was the radio show, and I think your office somehow reached out to me for you to come onto the show, I think is how it worked. And so I went into the office to meet you, and I just remember talking. I'm like, hey, I'm David Rych from Reality Radio. I'm here to talk to Erin, Weinstein about coming on my show. And they're always like, oh, she's so great. You should totally interview her. We love her, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, come on. Let me meet her. Bring out this angel.
I hope they still love me that much.
Sure
6 years later.
Right, exactly. Well, good for you, and congratulations on everything. You're a very well accomplished human being. You're one of my favorite local politicians. I love knowing you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I always wear. You got me that T-shirt, the Rosa Parks T-shirt that said "Nah." I love that T-shirt.
Oh yeah, it's a Rosa Parks. Like supposedly she said move to the back of the bus. She's like, nah. And so she says, nah, Rosa Parks. Yeah, no,
I love that
cool.
shirt.
That's right. Yeah.
Sometimes I just wear that T-shirt because we have T-shirt Fridays, and I'll just throw a blazer over it. So
fabulous. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
It's gonna wear out.
Do it. Toneal, how about you? What's next for you? What do you think you're gonna do?
Oh my goodness. So just politically, I have a billion things going on all at the same time.
Yes, you do.
I think the biggest thing for me is, in the political realm, as I said, we are growing the Green Party. So this year we're focused on expanding and expounding upon our issues, which obviously is going to be something to do with water, because that's the lane that we're establishing at. But we're also adding to that green places and green transportation. So like green spaces, I think it is, and green transportation. And so working on expounding that. From my personal, professional purview, I am embarking upon doing another documentary, and I'm trying to get interviews started this month. And the irony is that since this is Women's History Month and this is what this show is about, it is going to be interviewing different women. It's called I Survived It All. And so I look to interview a variety of women who have survived, whether it be different types of discrimination, abuse, motherhood issues, or disease. And when I say motherhood issues, such as being raped and having your baby as a result of rape, or suffering a miscarriage, or even if you had a child who was killed and still, so like kind of the traumatic part of motherhood, but still the fact that you're here. And so this is definitely going to be a women empowerment piece, and I'm looking to debut that. So I'm gonna probably be interviewing all this year, and I want to debut that for Women's History Month next year. And so that's probably the biggest project that I am undertaking right now. That's the main thing I'm working on. So yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. And yeah, you're right. Tip of hat to you. You are just a busy bee, and you make a lot of things happen for a lot of people, which is great. I mean, it's such a pleasure knowing you. Absolutely. So good luck with everything. Yeah. All right, Anna, you got the last word.
All right. Hopefully I'll continue being co-chair of the Illinois Green Party, and just straightening our team and still building, making lots of connections south of 80. So just looking forward to still continuing on with the team.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Yeah, no, the Green Party needs all the support it can get here in Illinois. It's a very active community, which is very cool. And I think that third parties are probably going to become a bit of a bigger deal in the next couple elections. The Libertarian Party is growing in notoriety as well. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, very cool. Well, thank you very much, all of you, seriously, for coming on the show. This is such a great conversation to have, and I learned so much. And I just applaud you all for what you do. And the history of this country from the beginnings, I think that a lot of people don't understand. It's really been a fight, like, for everybody besides, like, white English males. From the inception, like, everybody else had to fight to get their permission to live the life that they wanted to live, which I find a bit disdainful, but it's how it happened. And women had no shortage of suffrage either, just because they're women. Sometimes it was being a woman and being of a certain race. Sometimes it's just because you were a woman that you were expected to do certain things and weren't allowed to do other things, which I just don't. I since I was a kid, I never understood. I always thought that was stupid. Like, if you're able to do it as an individual, why would you not be able to try? Like, I don't. Anyway, okay. So before I go on a rant, thank you again all for what you do, for who you are, and for letting me know you and be a part of your lives directly or indirectly. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the Illinois Green Party series. I'm your host, David Rych. Till next time, be good, be green.